We're into week 4 in a series we've called Get Up and Lead. And our objective over these weeks is to study 14 leadership qualities. And I'm not going to study all of them. We don't have time for that. But we did ask you to help us. What are the most important ones to you? Which of the 14 qualities in a survey we gave you do you want to hear about the most? And so we've been diving into these 14 leadership qualities. Now, they could all be talked about from a secular point of view. Any business could be talking about these 14 qualities, but we've been looking at them from scriptural perspectives. In week 1, we talked about influence. In week 2, we talked about self-discipline. In week 3, last weekend, we discussed attitude. This weekend, I want us to talk about the power of our relationships. Your ability to foster and maintain quality and meaningful relationships is going to be one of the most significant factors that will determine the success or failure in every area of your life. Your relationships matter. Relationships are unavoidable. And if you're bad at them, you're going to sabotage friendships, you're going to sabotage your family, and ultimately you're going to sabotage your career aspirations. Relationships impact everything, literally. Everything in your life is impacted by the quality of your relationships. And we want to look at relationships from a biblical perspective, just like we have all the other qualities that we've discussed so far. But I'm going to ask you to give me just a moment because I want you to see the way the world thinks about relationships. I want you to see what people in education and in science and in technology and in business, what are they saying right now in the corporate world? What are they saying about the importance of relationships? And I think you will see, like I have seen as I prepared for this message, that all of these leaders in the marketplace are discovering what Jesus has been teaching us all along, that quality and meaningful relationships are the key to success. There are 2 data points that are often cited that have been discovered through Gallup's research. After countless hours of research and thousands of interviews with employees in large corporations, 2 often cited data points that point to the power of relationships in the workplace. Number 1, most often people don't leave jobs. They leave a boss or they leave a manager, which speaks to relationship. Here's the second data point that's Gallup has discovered. The number 1 predictor of job satisfaction was determined by an employee's relationships at work. If the employee, this is what they found, if the employee has just one close friend at work, they had a longer tenure with the company and were far more productive, which obviously helped the bottom line of the company. It's about relationship. Again, positive relationships and quality connections add value everywhere. And where the relationships are negative, it's a drain everywhere. As I researched for this message, I kept unintentionally stumbling across conferences for and books written to educators, business leaders, equipping them with practical keys on how to build meaningful relationships at work. Relationships that would benefit their students or benefit their clients, but ultimately those things would then end up advancing their careers. So for those of you that have influence on any team in any workplace environment, listen to me. I'm going to take about 2 minutes here and just give you a little bit of what I found, and then I'm going to move on and we're going to dive into a Bible study. But I want to add value to those of you that are marketplace leaders. Let me just throw this out there. One of the things I ran across was Jane Dutton's research. Jane Dutton is a researcher and the Distinguished University Professor Emerita of Business and Psychology at the University of Michigan. Now, if you find her research, it reads like it is, scientific research. But they have taken her research and turned it into a book called Be a Positive Leader. Not by any means a Christian book, but it has some incredible information backed by quality research. And much of the material in her research has proven the power of relationships. And here's a quick summary for those of you that influence people on teams in the marketplace. 4 pathways to fostering positive relationships at work. This is your free book summary for the morning, all right? Number 1, respectfully engage with people. And this is how you do that. Here's how you respectfully engage with people. You're fully present, which means you turn off your phone, and when you're talking to somebody, you're not staring at the paperwork on your desk. You are fully engaged in the conversation. Be fully present. This is how you respectfully engage with people. Be fully present. Number 2, truly listen. Most people don't truly listen when you're talking to them because they're not listening to understand you. They're listening to figure out what their response is going to be. So stop listening to respond and start listening to understand. And I've learned this for years. One of the best ways to truly listen is at the end of the conversation, summarize what the person said to you. I often will say back to people on the phone or in an appointment, so this is what I'm hearing you say. And I can't tell you how many times I summarize what I thought I heard them say. I give them clarity and they say, no, that's not what I intended to say. And we're able to get to an understanding together. A third thing to respectfully engage with people is to communicate supportively. Don't beat around the bush. Be direct, be clear, but be compassionate in the process. Here's a second pathway: help others succeed. Now, I reworded that. The way it says it in the research is task enabling others. That sounds like a scientist said it. Task enabling others. Why can't you say it the way we all understand it? That means helping others succeed. Zig Ziglar said it this way: you can have everything in life you want if you will just help other people achieve what they want. A third pathway to building positive relationships at work: build trust. And you can only do that through time, consistency, honesty, and integrity. And this was shocking, but it came up over and over again in the research. Number 4, play together. It's been proven that people who have fun together have more meaningful relationships which ultimately produce the better bottom line for a company. And so corporations are trying to plan opportunities for people to actually have fun together while they're at work. Obviously, these 4 pathways are based on research in workplace environments, but I think you can see that those are transferable principles to every meaningful relationship in your life, and they can be used to build meaningful relationships in any area. And you know why this is true? Is because God wired us as human beings to flourish in a community of people. He wired us to flourish in an atmosphere of quality and meaningful relationships. What Jesus has said 2,000 years ago is finally being confirmed by modern research. Everything revolves around relationship. In Mark chapter number 3, it says this, verse 13, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him. Take note of that. He appointed 12. This is the calling of the 12 apostles. And he appointed them first that they might be with him, and then that he might send them out to preach. When you think about the apostles, you think about the books they've written, the sermons they preached, the miracles they performed. But the first thing, the priority when Jesus called them was that they might be with him. The first thing he called them to was relationship. The kingdom of God is a kingdom of relationship. That famous verse, John 3:16, that we always quote says this: God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. When the scripture says God loved the world, it's not a reference to God loving the planet. Sure, God loves the creation that he has created and we need to take care of it. But it's not saying God loved the mountains and the oceans and the streams and the valleys and the rivers and the fields. When he says God so loved the world, it means God so loved people. John 3:16 is all about relationship. God was so passionate for relationship that he sent his son to restore a broken relationship with the human race. We're going to see this more in detail in just a moment, but the writer of Hebrews says this about Jesus: for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. The joy set before him, that's a joy that is in front of him, a future joy. What was the future joy for Jesus? His future joy was a relationship with you. A relationship that would be accomplished because he went to the cross. A relationship was his joy. Relationship was his passion. And it was that future joy of relationship that fueled him during the greatest season of suffering in his life. The kingdom of God is about relationship. A teacher of the law one day came to Jesus and he asked Jesus a question: which is the greatest commandment? Now you have to know the context of that conversation. There were the 10 commandments, obviously, and then there were some rabbinical teachers that had some religious authority who had scoured the Old Testament and come up with over 600 more rules that people had to follow in order to live a life that they said was pleasing to God. There were about 613 of them if you count the 10 commandments. All of them together, they had compiled a list of 613. And every rabbi had their emphasis on a certain set of rules, and they would argue within the 613 which is the most important. And they're arguing amongst themselves, and one of the younger teachers of the law was genuinely curious what Jesus said was the greatest commandment. So he came to Jesus, and when he said, which is the greatest commandment, he was talking about out of these 613, what do you say, Rabbi, is the most important commandment in all? And this is what Jesus said in verse 30 of Mark 12. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So Jesus takes 613 rules, boils them down to one principle, and that principle is relationship. All that matters is relationship. And the two commandments that are based on relationship is your relationship with God and your relationship with people. Here's what pleases God. Love Him, love God, and love people. And if you do this, you're going to please God, you're going to live a more fulfilled life, and you're going to make a greater impact on the world. It's taken our scientific research 2,000 years to catch up with what Jesus has been saying all along. Let's take some time. If the kingdom is a kingdom of relationship, and Jesus spent a great portion of his ministry emphasizing the priority of relationship, then let's learn from him. Let's look at how do we build quality connection and meaningful relationship by learning from the master, the best. So I want us to look to Hebrews 12. That's the passage where Jesus, it says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. But let's look at the whole context of that today. Hebrews 12, chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Listen to this. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That's what the writer of Hebrews said. Let him be your example. Look to him, consider him, and then as you look to him and learn from him, maybe you won't grow weary and lose heart in the process. Now, this passage holds some incredibly deep truths, but it holds some incredibly practical truths on building focused relationships. And I key in on that word focused, because focused relationships are the opposite of what most of our relationships are. Most of our relationships today are distracted relationships with a high degree of disconnect, which is why so many marriages are failing, why so many churches split. It's why there's so many toxic workplace environments. Due to the pace of our lives and the advancement in digital technology, we have hundreds, if not thousands of acquaintances, but there are a whole lot of people who have no real friends. This passage in Hebrews chapter 12 shows how to build quality connections and focused relationships. Now, you know this, but let me just say this. Your focus determines what you follow. If the number one focus of your life is success, then success is going to be what prioritizes and drives your life. Success is going to be the magnet that pulls on you and tugs on you. But if your number one focus in life is success at all cost, then you're going to step over people closest to you to try to impress people who don't even care about you, because you're trying to impress for success. Your focus will determine what you follow. And you and I both have the power to choose what we're going to focus on. We have the power to choose the magnet that is going to pull on us and going to tug on us. And it just makes sense. If the kingdom of God is a kingdom of relationship, and Jesus said it ought to be our priority, then relationship should be our number one focus. Hebrews 12 simply confirms what Jesus taught in Mark 12. Our primary focus should be on our relationship with God and our relationship with people. It's our relationship with God that focus on that relationship changes everything. So let me just talk to you for a few moments, give you some keys to building focused relationships. Number one, my focus on my relationship with Christ will meet my deepest needs. Let me tell you why that's important. If I'm going to build quality connection and meaningful relationship with other people, I have to start by focusing on letting Jesus meet my deepest needs. I don't build quality relationships with other people by focusing on building quality relationships with other people. I build quality relationships with other people by getting whole as an individual in my relationship with God. When Jesus is meeting my deepest needs, my security and my identity comes from Him. My security and my identity cannot be connected to my relationship with other people. It has to begin with God. Listen to the writer of Hebrews, the first part of verse 2, chapter 12. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Fixing our eyes on Jesus. In most of our marriages today, the number one focus is on each other. But when you look to your mate to meet needs, the deep needs in your life that only God can meet, like fulfillment and purpose and meaning and happiness, your spouse is inevitably going to disappoint you because you're placing God-sized expectations on a human being. You're placing infinite weight on a finite human being, and you will crush them under the weight of unbearable expectations. In marriage relationships, when we stop fixing our eyes on Jesus, we start putting unhealthy expectations on each other. But when Jesus is the number one focus and we're fixing our eyes on Him, He draws us to Himself. He becomes the magnet of our lives. And if we're both chasing after Him, we can't help but be drawn closer to each other. Now, that really sets us free because no longer do we have pressure on us because Jesus is meeting the deepest needs in our life. It empowers us with the security and the identity we need to begin meeting each other's needs in the relationship. It changes everything. And that's true of any relationship. Some of you in this room that have a new boss, you're going on and on about how much better your new boss is than the last boss you had. But let me promise you, when the news wears off, you're going to be as frustrated with that boss as you were the last boss. It's true with friendships. If you're expecting a friend to make you happy or meet the deepest needs in your life, they're going to disappoint you. And it's going to cause problems in the relationship because when you fix your eyes on someone else to meet your deepest needs, it places unbearable stress on a relationship that leads to disconnection, distance, and ultimately isolation. Fix your eyes on Jesus because the health or the lack of health in that one relationship will determine the quality of every other relationship in your life. Here's the second key to building focused relationships. Get rid of the distractions. Listen to Hebrews 12, this time verse 1b. Let us throw off everything that hinders. Throw out everything that gets in the way. Get rid of what hinders and distracts. In other words, narrow your focus. If you want your relationships in marriage or at home with the kids or at work or anywhere in your life to be healthy, get rid of the distractions and narrow your focus. Remember how Jesus answered the teacher of the law. Rabbi, what do you say is the greatest commandment? And he took 613 laws and narrowed them down to one principle stated in two commandments. The principle was relationship. The commandment, love God, love people. He took the complex and made it simple. He narrowed our focus. Focus on your relationship with God and your relationship with people because everything else is just a distraction. The psalmist says it this way, Psalm chapter 4, verse number 2, how long will you love what is worthless and aim at deception? So many of us are spending our lives aiming at worthless targets. And here's the problem. We keep hitting the bullseye. And when you come to the end of your life, when you have spent your life aiming at worthless targets, you're going to realize that the aim or the focus or the magnet that was drawing you was a distraction from what matters most. You get to the end of your life and you look back and you spent your entire life chasing career or chasing a comfortable number in the nest egg or chasing something else. There was a magnet. When you get to the end of your life, you realize the magnet that has been drawing you has been distracting you from what matters most. And here's the crazy thing, it's human nature. The thing we cut first out of our lives when we get overwhelmed is the one thing that ought to be the most important focus of our lives. We cut out our relationships with God and we cut out our relationships with people. We stop doing devotions. We don't have time for prayer. We don't get in the Word. Our church attendance becomes spotty. There's no way we have any time for small groups. We're just too busy for that. So we wind up cutting out the most important things and we wonder why there's such imbalance and dissatisfaction and emptiness in our soul. We stop and survey our lives and we look at it, and all this stuff I wanted, somehow I've done everything I needed and I've got the stuff I wanted. I had all the stuff that I ever wanted, but I still feel empty on the inside. Why is that? Because we're missing out on meaningful relationships and quality connection because there's no stuff that can satisfy what God wired you to be. He wired you to find your greatest fulfillment and make your greatest impact through relationship. But we haven't made it our focus. We haven't been intentional because we don't have time for it. We're doing all the urgent things, and the whole time we're aiming our life at worthless targets, and we keep hitting the bullseye. It's deception and distraction that will never satisfy. Here's the third key to building a focused relationship. Eliminate poisoned arrows. And that'll make more sense in just a moment. Listen to the second part of verse 1 again. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Now, there are a lot of sins that entangle and destroy relationships, a lot of them, but I'm only going to talk about one of them, our words. And there's probably no greater text in the Bible that addresses the power of our words than James' discourse in James chapter number 3. Here's what he says in verse 8 about the power of the tongue. No one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Hear the wisdom of Scripture. Our words can be a deadly poison. We can't talk about relationship without talking about communication and conflict. Because when people are in any kind of relationship, conflict is going to be inevitable. And the closer the relationship, the more meaningful the relationship, the greater the potential for conflict. As a matter of fact, the only way you can move from a shallow, superficial relationship to a deeper, lasting, focused relationship is to go through conflict. You got to be honest with each other. And a lot of people don't understand that. I've pastored long enough and led large teams long enough over the last almost 30 years that I can tell you the more trust there is among team members, the more honest the conversations are going to be in public around the table. Now, there are a lot of people who don't understand that dynamic. So they'll walk into a room where there's a team around the table and nobody's arguing, nobody's disagreeing, everybody's just nodding and smiling and everybody's getting along. If I walk into a room and a team and everybody's just nodding and smiling and nobody's disagreeing and getting along, the ones that are nodding and smiling are the unhealthy ones, okay? Because if there is a healthy dynamic of trust in a team, people are going to disagree with each other. They're going to argue with each other. Conflict is going to be a part of that relationship. If you don't trust somebody, you're not going to say anything. You're not going to bare your soul. What's going to happen in that? You're going to nod and smile in public, and then you're going to go back into your offices and talk bad about each other. An environment where there is trust, it's all out on the table publicly. But healthy teams and healthy relationships don't shy away from conflict. There is a word for this in the corporate world. In the corporate world, they call this honest conversation robust dialogue. Okay. In my marriage, it's called an intense moment of fellowship. Conflict in any relationship is inevitable and necessary. And the way that you deal with conflict in any relationship will determine the success or failure of that relationship. You got to know how to resolve conflict and communicate wisely. Because if you don't, you're just shooting poison arrows at the other person and sowing seeds of bitterness. And here's what happened. Long after the argument is over, the conflict is past, you're feeling better about it. What happened is, during the heat of the battle, you shot poisoned arrows at somebody that mattered to you, and those seeds germinate and begin to create bitterness in the heart. And the conversation is over, the conflict, it looks like it's over on the surface, but the bitterness is taking hold in that person's life because of the poisoned arrows you shot in the heat of the battle. In the 3rd chapter of James, we not only have this incredible discourse on the power of the tongue, in the context of that, James actually gives us rules to communicate wisely in healthy communication, in your marriage, on your team at work, with your kids, in any relationship, all right? I almost cut this out for the sake of time, but I thought it was so important. It's incredibly practical information straight from the Word of God. Every one of us needs it. I'm going to move fast, but I think I need to say this today. So let's just look at it together. James chapter 3, verse 17, he's given us rules for healthy conflict resolution. But the wisdom, this is in the context of our relationships and the tongue passage, James 3. This is where this context is. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. Verse 18, those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. 7 rules for conflict resolution in verse 17. Here's number 1, always check my motives. James says, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure. What are your motives in the conflict? You have to ask yourself this question. Am I bringing this tough issue up to build up the relationship or to tear down the other person? Am I bringing this up because I know that this honest conversation is going to produce conflict, but I love this person so much and I love this relationship so much that I don't want to settle for a shallow, superficial relationship? The conflict is necessary and I'm doing it because I love them and I love this relationship. Or am I bringing this up because I'm mad and I just want to get it off my chest so I feel better? It all goes back to the motives. Are they pure? The wisdom from above is first of all pure. Always check your motives. Number 2, never attack the person, attack the issue. James says, but the wisdom from above is also peace-loving. The goal of the argument is to bring a deeper peace to the relationship, not win the argument. You can win the argument and lose the relationship. It happens every day. People are winning arguments and losing relationships. Don't attack the person. Don't shoot arrows at the person. Shoot arrows at the issue. Don't say things like, you make me so mad. You did this. You did that. That's attacking the other person. And when you do that, all you're going to do is escalate the conflict because it raises their defenses and they start shooting poison arrows back at you and it just gets worse. And that's why some of us have been arguing over the same things with the same people for years and never getting any resolution because all we're doing is shooting poisoned arrows back and forth at each other, attacking the other person, never getting to the issue. You deal with the issue by saying things like this. I feel insecure when you do that. It frustrates me when you do that. I feel hurt when you do that. See, there are 3 root causes of anger: hurt, frustration, and insecurity. When I'm hurt, I get angry. When I'm feeling insecure, I get angry. When I'm frustrated, I get angry. But when you start the conversation by saying, I feel hurt, instead of you hurt me, you're still going to have conflict. It's still going to get heated. But you're dealing with the root issue and instead of attacking the other person. And it allows you to converse at a much deeper level without embittering each other in the process. Number 3, never raise my voice. No yelling, no swearing. But the wisdom from above is gentle at all times. Not sometimes, at all times. If you got to write this down, write it down. If you can't remember it, write it down. When you yell, you fail. It's going to get heated. It gets messy. And you're going to say some things that you wish you could have said better. But don't yell, don't scream, don't swear. Those are all poisoned arrows aimed at the other person. Wisdom from above is gentle at all times. Number 4, never interrupt. James says, but the wisdom from above is willing to yield to others. We said it a moment ago. In conflict, most people don't listen. When there's an argument going on, most people are not paying attention to you while you're talking. They're just trying to formulate the best stinging comeback they can think about. They're not listening to understand you. They're listening to respond to you. They're trying to win an argument. And we said earlier, if you care about the person at all, you care about the relationship, don't listen to respond, listen to understand. Because if all you're doing is listen to respond, there's going to be so many interruptions and so many side trails in the conversation, you're never getting to the real issue. You got to set ground rules before you go in. And when I speak ground rules, when I used to do premarital counseling a lot, I would tell anybody getting into a marriage relationship, Haley and I did this. We have a rule in our relationship, and this is true in any relationship, but especially in marriage. Usually in a marriage, there is a walker and a talker. When a fight breaks out, there's one of them that wants to talk it out, and there's one of them that wants to walk out the door and leave. Okay? Haley is the talker, I'm the walker. When we get mad, I'm ready to go. Just leave me alone, let me out of the house. Well, she's like, no, let's sit down and talk about that. Let's work through this. Well, the reason I don't want to stay, I'm a wordsmith, and I've spent my life trying to get really good at words. So when you match my wordsmithing with my anger, I can cut you really fast, okay? And I don't want to say something I'll regret. So when things blow up, I just want to run and cool off. So early on in our marriage, we made this rule. Like, I would just go into a room and just try to get away, and then she'd be banging on the door outside. You got to come out here and talk to me. Or she would chase me to my truck. You got to talk to me. And I was like, all right, we got to do something here. I need space, and you need to talk. So we came up with a 30-minute rule that when it gets heated and I got to walk away, she's got to give me 30 minutes. But at the end of those 30 minutes, I got to come back whether I want to or not and finish the conversation. I can't tell you how many times that's helped me calm down, not use my words as poisoned arrows, and then bring resolution. You gotta set some ground rules going in. Yield to others. Don't interrupt. Number 5, never keep score. But the wisdom from above is full of mercy. In most relationships, people have a running tally. How many times have you heard this in an argument? I'm not apologizing. I was the first one to apologize last time. That's a scorecard. Wisdom is full of mercy. If you want to have meaningful dialogue and relational conflict, you got to throw out the scorecard. Number 6, always follow talk with action. James says, but the wisdom from above is the fruit of good deeds. I can't tell you how many times through the years I've had people say to me, Pastor, I've told them I'm sorry 100 times and nothing has changed. You know why nothing has changed? Because they're waiting to see if it's true. Because if the apology is legit and not just words, then actions are going to follow words. To put it in James' terminology, have you borne the fruit of good deeds after you said, I'm sorry? Because if you're truly sorry, your actions are going to match your words. Words are meaningless without actions to back them up. Number 7, always speak from the heart. But the wisdom from above is always sincere. If you want to get somewhere in conflict, you got to drop your guard, you got to be authentic, and you got to be vulnerable. You got to speak from your heart. Speak from your true feelings. Be sincere. Now, this doesn't happen in most arguments because we don't trust, we're trying to protect our turf, and we're trying to win. So we got all these masks and facades up in front of us. But if the person means anything to you at all, and the relationship means anything to you at all, you got to risk being vulnerable to resolve the conflict. The wisdom from above is always being sincere. Now let me wrap this up with the 2 last keys to building focused relationships. This is what we've said so far. My focus on my relationship with Christ will meet my deepest needs, empowering every other relationship in my life. Number 2, I have to get rid of distractions. I got to quit aiming at worthless targets that are distracting, those magnets that I don't need to be focusing on that are pulling me the wrong direction. Get rid of the distractions. Number 3, eliminate the poison arrows. There are a lot of them when it comes to relationships. We just talked about words. Number 4, if I'm going to build focused relationships, I have to connect with a community of Christ followers. Look back to Hebrews 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Now, in order to know who's in that great cloud of witnesses the writer talks about, you got to read chapter 11. Chapter 11 is this roll call of these incredible heroes of the faith that we read about in the Bible. And the writer is saying those heroes of the faith are the ones that are in that great cloud of witness. And he's telling us we're not running alone. We are surrounded. So I want you to play like with me for a moment. That end of the building back there is better at playing like than we are. But just play like with me for a moment, all right? Imagine, because this is what I do. When I get discouraged, I have an imagination that is built on a biblical promise that I am surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. So imagine for a moment you're in this bowl of a stadium that seats 100,000 people. And every one of the seats in that stadium are occupied by somebody that is cheering for you. There's a field and a track down at the bottom of that bowl, and there's absolutely no other runner, no other athlete. You are the only other person on the floor of that stadium, and there are 100,000 people in the bowl cheering for you. That stadium is full. And when I get discouraged, this is what I think about, the great cloud of witnesses. I stand in my mind's eye at the bottom of that bowl and I look up and I see in the stands Abraham and King David and Daniel and Ruth and Matthew and Mark and Luke and John and Deborah and I see all of these champions of the faith, Paul and the martyrs of the faith, and then I see many of my loved ones that have already gone on, my grandparents and my dad. They're in the stands cheering for me. They want me to make it. I am surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, and when I get weary and tired, I see them clapping for me saying, you can do this. Thousands upon thousands are surrounding me in that great cloud of witnesses. I need that reminder. But I need more than an imagination built on a biblical promise. I need to be surrounded here in the flesh by a great cloud of witnesses. I need a community of Christ followers making spiritual deposits in my life. I need somebody on my team. I was an addict. And I will tell you I can't tell you how many times I tried to break out of the addiction. I would get sober and I'd get clean and I would say I've been clean long enough. I love the people that I used to do the stuff with. I mean, they were the closest relationships in my life. And so I wanted to be with them. I wanted to do life with them. And so I would get sober and they're still partying and they would say, hey, we're going to help you. You stay clean, but you just come with us and let's hang out. We loved each other, right? We just loved doing life together. And I would go be with them. And maybe for one night or a few hours, I would stay sober. But the more I was with them, the magnet, the pull was too strong. And I kept falling back in my addictions. When I met Jesus, I knew the only way to stay clean was to change my circle of friends. I had done it that way long enough. And I will tell you, it was an answer to prayer. Right after I came to faith in Christ, I went to a church camp. I met Haley. I didn't have a lot of Christian friends. Haley was surrounded by Christian friends in her life. We lived 2.5 hours apart, but she started introducing me to her circle of friends. I didn't have anybody to replace those people with, and it was incredibly lonely. So she started introducing me to her friends, which allowed me to grow in my faith, maintain the sobriety, answer the call of God. And when I talk about this and I testify this, she says, yeah, I made you. You understand that? I made you. I'm the one that made all this happen. You know, that's the argument that goes on in our house. But I will be honest with you. It was an answer to prayer, and her network of relationships became the community of Christ followers that were a great cloud of witnesses that helped disciple me and walk out a life of sobriety. That's why you need to host a group. That's why you need to get in a group. You need to build some relationships. And here's the final key to building focused relationships. Look past the current pain and see a future hope. It may be painful right now and difficult in that relationship. But with the eyes of faith, you're a believer, you're a child of God. There is a measure of faith that has been deposited in your heart. And with the gift of faith God has placed in you, you have to look past the pain of the moment in that relationship and begin to see the future different. Yeah, you got to do your part, and that's not always easy. But then you have to believe God is going to do the supernatural thing that only God can do so that the future of that relationship, whether it's with your parents or with your kids or with a friend or at work or with your spouse, that the future of that relationship is different than the pain and the conflict that is in it right now. This is one of the greatest definitions of commitment you will ever hear. Commitment is being willing to be miserable for a while. That's true if you're on a treadmill. That's true when you start a new eating program. And that's true in relationships. Commitment is being willing to be miserable for a while. Regardless of how bad it is at work or home or at school, somehow let the Spirit of God stir the gift of faith in you and get your eye on a future hope. Listen to Hebrews 12:2. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. The joy set before him. The way he endured suffering, persecution, and the most difficult season of his life was anchoring his faith in a future hope. That future hope, that future joy was relationship with you. And my challenge to you, no matter how painful that relationship is, would you anchor your heart into the hope and the expectation that as you do your part, God will supernaturally be at work. And over time, he will begin to do his part. Get your eye on a future hope. That's what Jesus did. And I encourage you to do the same. As I prepared for the message this weekend, I asked the Lord, how do I conclude this today? And I'm going to provide the opportunity for the prayer team to come and if you have any need in your life, a physical need, a prayer for healing, a financial need, a prayer for provision, maybe a relationship need, healing and restoration, whatever the need may be, the prayer team is going to be here today to serve you. But I just sensed as I was preparing my message today, there were people sitting out there arguing with me because of the relationship situations you're in. And I just thought, what I want to do today is I want to pray over that person. I want to pray over those people. There's some people in this room today taking some things for granted. And I want to pray over you today. And so if you'll what I felt in my heart is I just needed to pray a very honest pastoral prayer today. People that kept coming to my heart as I was preparing the message today. And then I'm going to allow the prayer team to come and serve you. And we're going to keep the environment worshipful. Father, as a pastor today, I don't know the names and faces, but I just felt it in my heart. There's somebody sitting out there today arguing with me, and they know what I'm saying is straight from the Word. But right now they're saying this, but what good is all of this if I'm the only one in the relationship that cares? What good is this if I'm the only believer in the relationship? The people at work don't care. The people at work are not going to play by ground rules. My husband's not a believer. He's not going to play by ground rules. My wife's not a believer. She's not going to play by ground rules. So is it even worth it if I'm the only one? And God, would you somehow in that moment as they ask that question, would you help them understand the power that is in the Word of God? The power that is in obedience to you even when it doesn't make sense. Somehow it's obedience that sets the miracle in motion today. And for that wife or that husband today that has an unbelieving spouse and they're not here today, they're not listening to this today, would you help them understand if they can commit to do their part, that you will see their obedience and you will see their heart. If they commit to stop shooting poison arrows and stop being distracted and start investing in what matters most, if they commit, even if they're the only one that commits, that you will see that. And you will begin to work supernaturally in the workplace. You will work in the kids' lives. You will work in the marriage. You will work in that relationship. Would you give them that assurance today? Because I know they're asking that question. And Lord, for the husbands and wives that are sitting beside each other in this room, that actually have the blessing of both of them hearing truth from Scripture and growing together, they take that for granted because there are people not so far over from them that are trying to figure out, how do I do this if I'm doing this by myself? So would you let these married couples in this room that have believing spouses, or at least spiritually hungry spouses, not take that for granted and begin to apply the seeds of your word into their relationship, and may it bear fruit for the kingdom. My heart goes out to everybody here, God. There's not a one of us in this room that doesn't need these truths. And would you mobilize this army to build deep connections and healthy, focused relationships? Would you stand with me all over this place today? Prayer team, would you make yourselves available to serve this congregation this morning? And let me just pray a blessing over your lives today as they come. We're going to open these altars, and I just believe God's going to touch people who respond in faith today. Father, would you bless them and keep them? Let your face shine down on them. Lord, be gracious to them. Look their way, God. Turn your countenance their direction and give them peace. May there be peace in their relationships. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. These altars are open. God bless you.